Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good late night, whatever it may be when you're watching this video. It's nice and quick and short this lesson. We're going to continue our talk about real numbers. Today we're going to talk about ordering real numbers. So let's take a look. Ordering real numbers on the number line. So I'm going to draw a number line down here because we're going to use it in a second. Sorry that it's so crooked, that's not really a line, but first, the easy method. First, you should convert all numbers into a decimal by typing them into your calculator. So an example would be, what is the order of the square root of 4, 0.4, negative 2/3, square root of 2, and negative 1/2 from least to greatest? Well, the first thing you do is convert everything into a decimal. So the square root of 4 we know is just 2. So I'm going to connect these guys with lines. 0.4, well, that's already a decimal, so we can leave it. Negative 2/3 converts to negative 0.67. The square root of 2 converts to 1.414. And lastly, the negative 1.5 is already a decimal. So now that we have everything in a decimal, we're just going to put it in order. So negative 1.5 is the furthest away from 0. So if I have my number line down here, this is 0. Negative 1.5 is going to be the furthest away from 0, somewhere down here. The second order is going to be negative 0.67. And remember, I want to write on my answer the original. So negative 0.67 was negative 2/3. The next one in order is 0.4. And now we're on the positive side of the number line. And 0.4 was the original number. Then we have 1.414, which we remember our original was the square root of 2. And finally, we just have 2. So that's how you would create your number line. However, we may need to do this without a calculator. And the reason we need to do this without a calculator is because there's a portion on the Keystone exams or any kind of standardized test, usually the SATs as well, that have a portion where you're not allowed to use your calculator. Well, this is the type of question that would be on there for not using your calculator. So what we need to do is be able to estimate these values. So I kept the same values as before, and this time, that purple's really hard to see. I'm going to do a different color. Blue, the square root of 4, well, if we simplify that, we know that's 2. So I'm going to write my numbers over here. So I have 2. 0.4, well, I know that value, so I'm just going to write that over here. Then we have negative 2/3. Well, if I look down here, negative 2/3 is located somewhere between 0.5, negative 0.5, sorry, and negative 1. Then I have the square root of 2. If I estimate the square root of 2, remember we did this the other day, we want to find the two perfect squares on either side of it, which in this case are square root of 1 and square root of 4. So the square root of 2 must be somewhere between 1 and 2. And then lastly we have negative 1.5. So if I draw my number line down here, and I put just values in for my number line, just labeling it, and then I want to plot these 3 points. Well, we're going to start with the 2. Well, 2, we know where it's at. It's right here. So that's going to be our 2. 0.4 is going to be somewhere between 0 and 1. So that'll be there. All right, we said negative 2/3 is somewhere between 0.5 and negative 1. So that's going to be somewhere closer to negative 1 than halfway. The square root of 2, we said, is somewhere between 1 and 2. So somewhere between 1 and 2, we'll just put it there. And lastly, we have negative 1.5, which is going to be right about there. So now you can see how they plot out on the number line, and we can figure out from least to greatest this way the order. So that would be the easiest way to do it without a calculator. Obviously, if you have a calculator, you can convert them into decimals. That's all I have for today. I'll see you guys later.